And Congressman Mick Mulvaney filed a bill this week that would amend the Constitution and impose term limits on members of Congress. The bill calls for a maximum of 24 years of service for lawmakers, but that would break down to a maximum of 12 years in each the House and the Senate. In a statement Wednesday, Congressman Mulvaney wrote this about the new measure. Believe me, 24 years is more than enough time to serve in Washington. I actually pushed for much shorter terms, but compromised at 12 plus 12 in order to gain the support of additional co-sponsors. Lawmakers are up for election every 2 years in the House and every 6 years in the Senate. The introduction of this bill comes on the heels, of course, of a series of polls that show Congress is becoming increasingly unpopular amongst Americans. In the latest Gallup poll put out in January, just 13% of Americans actually approved of the job Congress is doing. So could we see this measure get passed? To discuss this a little bit more, I was joined earlier by Christina Tobin, founder of Free and Equal. I first asked her what she thought of the 24-year proposal.
Well, I think it's irrelevant. I would advocate for most members of Congress having not much more time in office because the people are ready for a huge change. There's a shift in America, an awareness, and the polls are saying very strongly that it's time, to replace every member of Congress. And Democrats or Republicans alike, John F. Kennedy once said, let's not seek the Republican answer or the Democratic answer, but the right answer. And the right answer is that a lot of independents are going to be running for office.
Well, I want to actually get to that a little bit later, but as I understand it, in 2012, then Senator Jim DeMint proposed a similar amendment that would place limits on how long members of Congress could serve. The Senate overwhelmingly rejected DeMint's measure, voting 75 to 24 against it. So is there any reason to believe a term limit bill would pass now in 2014, considering the state of Congress today?
Well, term limits, the way I look at it, they don't even really help us because people who run for office, if they're term limited out, they just run for a higher office or even a lower office. So it's another trick into us thinking that this is going to help fix things when, in fact, it's the people in office that are making these not good laws and are not steering our world in a good direction. Right now, we have way bigger issues than term limits, like election fraud. The media leads us to believe voter fraud's an issue. It's really not. It's election fraud. We have, the closed source software and all these different things, to gerrymandering, to the Electoral College, and so on. And we, the people, will rise throughout the United States of America and the world to take our government back. So these issues just are so really not that, it's a distraction.
Well, Christine, I do want to ask you about something that Durbin has said.
Sure.
In 2012, when the Senate was voting on this, a prominent voice in opposition was Senator Dick Durbin. And he said about term limits, he said, for some members of Congress, 2 years in office is too long. And for some members of Congress, 20 years in office is not long enough. Who should make that decision? The Constitution, in its wisdom, says the voters of America make that decision. Let's stand by that Constitution and its language and defeat this sense of the Senate resolution. So do you think he has a point there in ultimately leaving it up to the people?
I think you can trust Dick Durbin as far as you can throw him. I mean, he's just a guy that doesn't represent the people. He represents the money, the elite, a few dozen people that use the two-party system, to the Federal Reserve, to mainstream media, and so on, to intentionally divide us across the world, the nation, and conquer. And so, we have the wrong people in office, whether we have, term limits or not. The people that are in office are representing the powers to be. And so, that being said, here at Free and Equal Elections, many of you, we worked with RT back in 2012 when we hosted the presidential debate moderated by Larry King and myself, and Aura TV and so on, many, many others. And you guys are really amazing and bring about awareness that, it's time to replace every member of Congress. And
well, Christina, I want to get to that in just 1 second, but first I wanted to mention something that you touched on, which is that congressional approval is very low. It's standing at 13%. Right. Of course, during the government shutdown, it was even lower than that. So tell me what you think that says about the frustration of American people right now.
Well, that's a great question, and thank you. The people are fed up with the people in office, and the polls are coming out very strong that independents are rising as well. And I do foresee a huge movement of independents rising and taking back our government. And again, you know, the people in office, whether it's discussing term limits, they should be talking about the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, the Patriot Act, the NSA, what Snowden and Assange and amazing individuals like that are doing to rise and bring the truth out. These are way bigger issues that members of Congress should be speaking about. And I'll tell you, there's a really awesome lady named Marianne Williamson. She's running as an independent for Congress in California's 33rd. She's a spiritual author. 30 years she's been writing books, New York Times best-selling author, and now she's running for Congress. So I see her really igniting and inspiring many more people to run for Congress throughout the U.S. because
perhaps term limits will give some new momentum to some third-party candidates. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but Christina Tobin, founder of Free and Equal, thank you so much.